I am Linda Parris-Bailey. My organization is the Carpetbag Theater, Incorporated, and we are based in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Briefly tell us how and when you came to the National Performance Network and how it's impacted your work.
Oh my goodness. The funny thing is that I don't remember years. I remember where. The meeting was in Miami. And we were invited as artists to the table, outside of the network. And we came to the NPN meeting in Miami and went from touring artist with some contracts with NPN to being one of the artist representatives at NPN, and became a presenting partner because we do present artists in our community. And I don't know what year that was. It was a long time ago, but I really don't remember what year it was.
It wasn't the post-Katrina 2006 meeting in Miami.
Oh, no.
It was a decade before or something.
Yeah, at least yeah.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask you this question. How has Carpetbag leveraged art, culture, and creativity to impact the quality of life in Knoxville, Tennessee, and for whom?
I think the answer to that question is our presenting. I'll just say we're a black and white community, and the African American population is small. We're somewhere around 15% in the city. We're somewhere around maybe 6% in the county. We're an Appalachian city, and it's not a place where there's a lot of diversity. So as we have brought in artists through the NPN network from across the region and across the country, it's provided, and internationally, it's provided an opportunity for our community to engage in ways that were just not possible before. We have some other small theater companies, but the University of Tennessee has its own season, is the other. It's the large theater. It's now Equity Theater. And they don't present artists from the outside. They do their season. And I think there were more opportunities in the late 70s than there have been in the last 15 years to see artists from across the country. So we provide a unique opportunity, to see Jose Torres Tama, to see Junebug, to see, other artists that are touring and being supported by the network. And it's not a one-off. It's a long-term relationship, and they are there for the week. So there are always workshops and ways to engage with the community. So that's been a terribly important thing in our community.
What does you think your organization ultimately means to your community at this point?
I think we are memory in a lot of ways. I think that we are seen as a kind of training ground for emerging artists. I think we're a kind of singular employer. I think we are the go-to people for the MLK Day celebration annually. I think we are the people that people go to when they have a community story idea and they say, can you work with this? Can you help us to tell the story dramatically? And I think we're also the organization that brings ideas and technology into the community related to performance. You know, we have been spending the last few years trying to build a digital story house, and that's one of our lane projects. We now have a house, and the house isn't large enough to be a theater, but it's large enough to be a digital storytelling center. So we've invested in that, and we've been used by the community, by the Beck Cultural Center, and other entities. We've worked with Helen Ross McNabb, which is the mental health provider, and you know, we've worked with people who are dealing with trauma. We have a program with veterans that we started doing as a partnership around our piece, Speed Killed My Cousin, in partnership with Art to Action in Tampa. Spent a lot of time in Tampa, took the process on the road to Houston and Dallas and other places. And we're just now at the point where we're making connections with the veterans services in our own community. So we're waiting for the MOU to come through so we can do digital storytelling with the veterans in our own community. So it's all about story, and it's all about how we can bring story, encourage story, and facilitate story in our own community. And I think that's the way we're seen.
I feel like Speed Killed My Cousin is such an example of a sustained, a thing that's not just a play, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the art. Can you remind me the years and the sort of the moments and highlights where Speed takes on this other aspect and becomes bigger?
Yeah, I think probably the 2014. I think we developed earlier than that, but I think 2014 is when we started to do the actual touring and production. And then we created the CAR project, which is Creative Arts Reintegration Project. And we did that as a part of our week-long residency series. Art to Action carried it through in Tampa while we were, back at home. Our Art to Action is a partner, and they have taken the lead on community veterans open mics, bringing in other artists, and it has resulted in a study grant that we're just completing. Art to Action, of course, is the lead, and they're the grantee. But it's a study about the impact of the practices of performance art. I mean, there are a lot of studies about visual arts and writing, but there aren't that many studies about the impact of performance. So, it's a pilot, but it's just completed. I just got the two reports, the qualitative and the quantitative reports back. We just got, in terms of Tennessee, our first grant to work with veterans around storytelling and around performance. We're going to be doing an open mic with veterans in Knoxville. So these are the things that have come out of that work, and I think it's also built a vocabulary around trauma for us and ways of working with trauma across the board.
For 33 years, NPN has made community engagement a pillar of residency support. How has it impacted what became your community engagement practices? Can you describe sort of the connectivity or the translation?
Well, I think our history is in community engagement. We only do original work. We build stories from the community stories around issues that we care about. That's kind of a practice. What NPN did for us, I think, is to enable us to broaden that practice in working with other communities and spending residential time in other communities. And, we were talking about this the other day, that we are invited back. right? So our practice expands as we engage, and then we are invited back. And the tools that we learn, we use in everything that we do. So that's kind of been how it has enhanced our process and enabled us to spread whatever we've learned with other communities. We don't, in our own touring practice, because we're a hybrid organization, I think that I don't quite know how to frame this particular statement. I'll ask me that question again.
Okay. What has been the translation of your experience with NPN community engagement, sort of structuring and and even thinking and expanding on that,
Mm-hmm.
to what has become your particular approach to impacting community through arts and culture?
Well, I think it's helped us, definitely it's helped us in terms of planning, and thinking far ahead of, our entrance into community. We don't have a cookie cutter kind of way of entering and exiting community, because we think both are important. So we start a practice of working directly with the community presenter, and this is our practice as well as the presenter, that those dialogues about what the community needs, what's the match with the artist, who is the artist best serving, or what, and because we know the artist, we know the fits, and we know where the stretches can be. So these are the things that guide our practice. And when we're usually successful, and when we make a mistake or have an unexpected success, we learn from those things. We've even been a part of, the NPN program, Performing Americas, right? So the most telling, interesting story, we brought in Companhia Urbana de Dança. And we kept trying to connect them because they are a hip-hop, a Brazilian hip-hop company. We presented them at the Clayton Center, which is in Maryville, about 20 minutes from Knoxville. But it's a wonderful facility, and the show looked so great. And, the audience turnout wasn't great. People didn't know who Companhia Urbana de Dança was. We promoted them the best we could, but, moderate. But then what happened was we were trying to put them into the black high school or the black middle school, and at that time the schools were, going through this transition where, no, we don't have time for arts, we're doing our testing, you can't come. You can't bring Companhia Urbana de Dança from Brazil into the school to meet with the students. And we're like, what? What? But what happened was that there is a community called Morristown, which is about 45 minutes from us. And in this community, they were having a kind of expansion of immigrant families, migrant families in the school, in this elementary school. And when I don't even remember who was that talked to them, and they said, oh, bring them, please bring them. And we're thinking, this is rural Morristown. We didn't really know about the community and other than the, European Americans that were always there. So we take Companhia Urbana de Dança to Morristown. And they're in a gym with like 600 kids. And the kids are going nuts. And they're dancing, and they're on the floor, and they're, you know, the little Latino kids who, you know, have just kind of been in the school, been a little marginalized, right? They're trying to spin on their head. They're trying to, you know, they're trying to do all these things that Compañía is doing. And they couldn't be contained. They came down off and of course the dancers were like just thrilled. So there are 600 kids around, and they're all dancing. They're all trying to do, you know, these stunts and tricks. And it was the most wonderful day. And it was our contribution to that community. And that was a day that I will never forget. I mean, it's like, it was wonderful. When we can bring that to a community, it's golden. It's golden, you know.
There's this implicit message of also we don't, even though we think we know our community, it is this constant change and shift.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so many satellites.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going forward, and you know, because you're in the Lane cohort too, you've been aware of there's a lot of shift going on within the NPN,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of changes to our basic structures.
Mm-hmm.
How might NPN maybe deepen its support to community engagement, to leveraging arts and culture to impact quality of life in the community? How might we do that to the benefit of our own mission?
Mm-hmm.
You know, has there been some things that have come to you, even if it's been in the uniqueness of the Lane experience, right? This is something I want to take forward, you know, more.
Well, you know, Lane is coming at a time for us, for Carpetbag. We're going through a succession plan, which means that we are not just changing the way we think and behave in terms of new initiatives based upon the grounding that we've already laid. But we're going through a transition of leadership. And it's been both tough and it's been smooth. So I don't know how those two things exist together, but apparently they can. And I think, you know, we even spoke today about sustaining that support, even if it is not rooted in continuous financial support. There are other ways that the Lane cohort can be supported and grow. We who are a part of Lane really don't want to see it as a 3-year initiative. It surely didn't take 3 years for us to get to where we are in terms of, you know, equity. So extending its life in some way, I think, is what's important. I think Lane members will deepen the cohort and deepen the discussion. So our gatherings are important. We are all moving in new areas that perhaps were underfunded, certainly needing support. I mean, it's like starting a new business in some ways, and for some Lane participants. So, you know, how are they supported? How are they financed? How are they resourced? So these are all questions that we are discovering in terms of how to utilize the funds and how to create a sustainable system. We've been around we'll be 50 next year, so we've been around for a long time. I think the kind of resources that Lane has made available to us, we've never gotten at one time, right? So over the years, it's been a little up and down and up and down. But multi-year funding, that's the first thing, because it enables you to think past a year's time. And the amount of funding and resources really enable you to do things that you may have thought about for 10 years or so, but you couldn't resource. So these are the kinds of things that, we've drawn from Lane. We haven't kind of had time to sit back and reflect. And probably what's unique to us is the fact that Lane is happening at our 50th anniversary. It's happening during our succession plan. It's happening, during all of this activity. So, at the end of 2019, and moving into 2020, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, because all of these things are happening at the same time. And it's a little overwhelming. We were going into 2019 and saying, we've got an activity almost every month, and a major activity. And there have been some unexpected, I don't know if I'll call them windfalls, but, we've gotten funding from Roy Cochran Foundation. Who knew that there was a relationship between Carpetbag and Roy Cochran, even though he comes from Knoxville, right? So that support for the anniversary series of 2 plays a year from our repertoire of original work, and then that'll be ended in 2019. So what's in line to replace that kind of support for our new work, or, So there are a lot of questions, but, I'm feeling good. We're facing them with grace and with money, which is different, right? We've had all the grace in the world, but we haven't had the money. So Lane is important. It's particularly right in through here. I mean, right at this particular time.
What change have you, 50 years is just so much, but what change have you seen in 50 years? I mean, from the standpoint of the organization. That's a big one.
That's a huge one. I mean, we've had years of kind of, I won't call it feast, except, creatively. But we've had ups and downs, and we've had our participation in things like the American Festival Project. We've had a series of instructional and resource input. I'm thinking now about the Association of American Cultures, which sent me to, Brabson Business School, and with 10 other artists, and we went through some amazing training, and all of the efforts that we have made to stay alive, to stay viable, to fund our projects and fund our work, our artistic work, and moving from an organization that at one time made 70% of its annual budget through touring, to a time when we weren't making probably 10% of our budget touring. We have seen organizations of color come and go, the field shrink. we've had friends and people who believed in us and provided us opportunities. We were at the New Victory in the first year of their productions, and Brother Wesley and people who believed in us and supported us. Gosh, it's a lot of years to try and summarize. But they tell me I'm working on a book, so, if you got any ideas about, no. Gosh, I mean, I don't know how to summarize 50
You did a
years.
beautiful job. Just hitting the highlights was enough for me.
Well,
I think we did good.
okay.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of really great things in here.
Okay.
So I put you there because I thought you would hit some highlights. And there's this question too of Linda, I can only imagine that Knoxville has changed a lot because of Carpetbag.
I'll just have to say thank you. Knoxville is in an interesting place now. It's growing, but I remember when there was more ensemble activity, more companies, the play group, and road company, all of those wonderful formative years, and we're not seeing that kind of activity, but we're seeing heavy investments in music, and Knoxville is changing, so hopefully there's an opportunity there, but wherever it is, we'll keep it going, so we are. And it was okay. It's really funny because I was in a somewhat strident conversation with Jonathan. This is revealing, and the one thing that he said that just kind of ended the conversation was, "I'm not going anywhere." Which means that he has that commitment to Carpetbag. And that's so, that's huge. That's like, all right, I can go off to wherever I'm going off to, and everything's going to be all right. So.
That's great.
Yeah, it was like.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
That was perfect.